Yuto Ayase is watching anime in the middle of the night due to a close friend's insistence when he's called downstairs to make snacks for his sister Ruko and his homeroom teacher Yukari. In the morning, he wakes them up, but ends up getting harassed by the two women. At school, while talking with his friends, they suddenly hear beautiful piano music, which they immediately recognize as Haruka Nogisaki's playing. She is their classmate who is pretty, rich, smart, and talented, which makes her very popular among her peers. Inside the classroom, Yuto glances at her before his view is blocked by his childhood friend, Nobunaga Asakura, who shows him an anime magazine called Clumsy Girl Aki-chan. Haruka suddenly stands up, attracting everyone's attention, which makes her flustered. Later, Nobunaga's name is announced through the school speakers because his borrowed book is overdue, and he requests Yuto to do it for him. Upon exiting the library, Yuto notices Haruka acting suspiciously as she checks out the same magazine he just returned. She bumps into him and gets horrified, thinking he saw it. She tries to escape, but she bumps into a shelf, toppling it over. Yuto moves to pick up her things, but she tackles him, toppling more shelves. Still, he sees the magazine, which makes her run away in embarrassment. That night, he realizes Haruka must love anime. He returns to school with Haruka's things, and he meets her at the entrance. After taking them, she bolts away. The next day, Haruka makes an effort to avoid Yuto. Unable to take it anymore, he confronts her, but he's rebuffed by Haruka's fans. When he finally corners her on the rooftop, she gets distressed that Yuto will tell everyone that she's an otaku, but he promises to keep her secret. He assures her that she's more than her hobby, making Haruka feel touched. Later, he receives a call from Haruka asking for his help. She forgot to return the magazine on time, and she's terrified of her name being broadcasted in the morning. They meet up at school and make their way to the library where they successfully return the magazine. Afterward, Haruka shyly asks Yuto to call her by her first name, and Yuto asks the same. While Yuto and Haruka talk about Aki-chan, a resentful group of Haruka's admirers is stalking them. After escaping them, she asks them to go to a shop in Akihabara. The next day, a dressed-up Haruka meets Yuto, and she tells him she planned their whole itinerary. They enter Terra Noana first, where Haruka feels faint after reading a BL doujinshi. Next, they go to Animate, but she doesn't buy anything. She reveals she has to save because her father doesn't give her allowance for anime stuff. She got into anime after a boy gave her the first edition of Innocent Smile at the park. Suddenly, Nobunaga arrives, and Yuto quickly hides Haruka. After he leaves, Yuto doesn't find her. During his search, he bumps into a girl who berates him for running around crowds. He explains the situation, and she points him to where she says his girlfriend went. He finally spots Haruka with some suspicious-looking guys and quickly jumps to the conclusion that she's in trouble. However, it turns out she's only helping them with directions. They enter a maid cafe, which makes Yuto flee at first. When he comes back, Haruka is dressed as a maid by the staff, and they are forced to take pictures together. Finally, they arrive at Portable Dream Station, where Haruka wants to buy a game console, but they're sold out. Haruka feels weak with dismay, so Yuto carries her out bridal style, making her blush. Later, Yuto comforts a disappointed Haruka, saying they had a lot of fun, which she agrees. Haruka crashes into a tree, and Yuto laughs. He treats her to gachapon as his apology for laughing, and she finally wins the Aki-chan figure she wanted. Yuto is having trouble deciphering Haruka's map to her house when a younger girl helps him. He arrives at a large property where Haruka greets him and introduces her maid, Hazuki. Yuto wonders where her anime posters are, and she reveals that she also keeps her interests secret from her family, as her father is strict. Haruka tells him they're alone inside the house, which makes him excited. Distracted, he drops his eraser. They both reach for it at the same time and their hands brush while their eyes connect. Their moment is interrupted when the door opens, revealing Hazuki and two others. Haruka introduces the younger girl from earlier as her younger sister, Mika, and her maid, Nanami. In private, Mika asks if he knows her sister's secret. When he feigns ignorance, she tickles him until he finally admits that he knows. Mika reveals that only their father still doesn't know about her sister's hobby. After their exams, Haruka is inviting him to the Natsukami when she's suddenly bumped into by a guy who sends her things spilling out of her bag. She's horrified when her Kamiket catalog is exposed to everyone. 3 days later, Haruka is still being absent from school. Yuto recalls how he pretended that he owned the catalog before Haruka ran away. Currently, the other students think Yuto is a disgusting otaku, but he doesn't care. A third year named Takeshi tells him to stop hanging around Haruka, but Yuto is unfazed. That night, he visits her home, and upon hearing Mika and the other maids jump to conclusions, he quickly explains the situation. They knock on Haruka's door, but she doesn't respond. Mika threatens to eat her cake and take Yuto away, and finally, she rushes out, saying Mika can't have Yuto before hiding again. She comes out saying that bothered her too, as she doesn't want people to judge him. Yuto recalls what Mika told him earlier. Haruka was bullied for liking anime, and even had to transfer schools. Currently, she tells Yuto that she doesn't want to end up alone. He assures her that he'll be fine. After all, she won't abandon him for that. He promises her that no matter what, he'll always be her ally. The next day, Haruka goes to school with him. Takeshi appears and tries to take Haruka away, but she flips him and tells him not to say bad things about Yuto. To his surprise, Haruka fearlessly says she owns the catalog before they leave. The Nogazaka siblings, Nanami and Yuto, follow Hazuki as she goes on her way. Earlier, Haruka asked Yuto's help, as she thought Hazuki had been acting strangely. Yuto had his doubts, but Mika and Nanami backed Haruka's worries. Mika then suggested that they follow Hazuki around. Haruka reveals that she's extremely close with Hazuki, as the siblings spent more time with her than their parents while growing up. The group continues to follow Hazuki to the department store. Yuto gets embarrassed seeing women's stores and quickly heads outside, where he bumps into the same girl from Akibara. Amused, the girl says it must be fate that they meet again. She bids him farewell just as Haruka appears, wanting to accompany him. Unexpectedly, Hazuki exits the building. While Mika and Nanami are busy trying on clothes, Yuta and Haruka continue tailing Hazuki. Suddenly, a drunk Yukari appears. They manage to ditch her, but they lost sight of Hazuki. Thankfully, they spot her inside a cafe. They decide to wait for her to finish eating when Ruko appears, saying her work is nearby. The two girls introduce themselves to each other. When Ruko starts being mischievous, Yuto jumps in front of Haruka, surprising his sister. She then asks her to take care of her little brother. The two continue to follow Hazuki, where they meet with a man in front of a bridal shop. A woman comes out and mistakes them for customers. They're both dressed up in wedding clothes before the mix-up is sorted. As compensation, they're given a free picture in wedding clothes. Later, they confront Hazuki, and Haruka tells her that she's been fully supporting her happiness. When Hazuki is confused, they tell her what they've been up to. She clears the misunderstanding by saying she went to the hardware store beside the bridal shop, and the man they saw is the manager. Flustered, Yuto and Haruka apologize, but Hazuki is only happy that they're concerned about her. Mika and Nanami arrive with all their purchases. When Haruka takes their purchase from Mika, the photo from earlier falls from her pocket. The other three then tease the two relentlessly. Nobunaga tells Yuto that Natsukomi is the biggest event for anime lovers like him. When Yuto bumps into the girl from Akibara for the third time, he notices her uniform, and it turns out to be that she's his new classmate, Shina Amamiya. She is directed to the seat beside Yuto, and they hit it off, which Haruka notices. She's immediately popular as she's smart, athletic, talented, and friendly. During lunch, she rushes towards Haruka and starts gushing over her, saying she's won very prestigious piano competitions. In class, Yukari announces that everyone needs to participate in one event in the coming swimming competition. Shina gets invited to participate in a relay with the other girls, and she agrees, although she looks troubled. She later reveals to Yuto and Haruka that she can't swim at all. Haruka recommends that they practice in the school pool before the competition. At the pool, Yuto gets flustered upon seeing their swimsuits. They're teaching Shina when Yukari shows up to supervise in her swimsuit. On the bleachers, Hazuki and Nanami wave at them, while Mika only wants to play. To Yuto's surprise, he sees Ruko grilling food on the other side of the pool. Everyone starts having fun, which concerns Yuto, but Shina is glad to have fun also. Before the day of the competition, Shina shows her friends how vastly she's improved. The next day, everyone does remarkably well in the competition, while Shina is starting to get nervous. She tries to calm herself down with a shower before Yuto finds her. He assures her she can do the relay well. When it's time for her event, Shina does well at first, but she gets a cramp in her leg. She sinks to the bottom of the pool, and Yuto dives in to save her. At the clinic, Yuto goes inside to comfort a depressed Shina when he stumbles upon her while changing. Before he can leave, she stops him before apologizing. He tells her that she doesn't need to be sorry when their classmates barge in. They know the whole situation, and they're touched by Shina's efforts. Nobunaga gives Yuto a Natsukami guide, and he's baffled by how seriously his friend is treating this event. The next morning, Yuto is surprised at how packed the train is, and when they arrive at the hall, there's already a long line waiting for them. Once inside, Haruka decides that she wants to buy Cat Bus Stop first, but there's already a long line. Before their turn, a man suddenly cuts in line and buys a copy of the book. When the staff says they're sold out, Haruka becomes weak, while Yuto protests that the guy before them had cut in line. The staff says they can't do anything about it, which makes Yuto angry, but Haruka tells him to let it go. Suddenly, a man calls out to them and gives Haruka a copy of the book that's supposedly sold out. He says he saw the whole thing earlier and wants to give Haruka a copy. Once the man is out of their sight, he turns out to be Nanami in disguise. Mika and Hazuki tell her she did a good job. They continue looking at the booths while Nobunaga spots Yuto, who's glad he's finally enlightened. After he leaves, Yuto finds Haruka browsing some of the doujinshi and becomes faint upon seeing a scene. They go through the other booths, where they see a lewd poster, making Haruka feel faint again. They come across some people doing cosplay, which makes Haruka excited. She goes to have a closer look, but people begin to snap her photos, mistakenly thinking she's a cosplayer. Haruka becomes uncomfortable, and Yuto is quick to her rescue, but the other guys won't let them leave easily. They're saved by Hazuki, Nanami, and Mika, who are in disguise. Haruka is grateful to Yuto, saying he's her hero. On the crowded train back home, Haruka hugs Yuto. He brings her home and later sees the trio that's been stalking them. That night, Mika calls Yuto in a panic just as he hears someone at the door. It's Haruka who's in tears. Haruka's father, Gento, finds out that his daughter went to Natsukami and has located her secret stash of anime stuff in her room. Enraged, he sends out his men to look for his errant daughter. Meanwhile, Haruka tells Yuto that her father now knows about her hobby. He had confiscated her anime stuff and refused to listen to her. Kazuki arrives saying she supports Haruka. Ruko and Yukari hear everything, and his sister proposes that Haruka can stay with them in the meantime. Hazuki tells Yuto to take Haruka up to her room, where she patrols the area. He takes Haruka upstairs, where she wakes up in his arms and becomes giddy, that she's being carried bridal style. On his bed, his imagination goes wild while thinking of Haruka in the next room. She knocks on his door and asks to sleep with him, because she's afraid of the dark. She sets up her futon on the base of Yuto's bed and later asks him to hold her hand. The next morning, Hazuki spots one of Gento's men and knocks him out. Yuto awakes and becomes alarmed when he doesn't see Haruka, but she's only making breakfast. He receives a call from Mika saying that their father had located them. Immediately they're surrounded and Gento slices through their door. Ruko attacks him while Hazuki moves to protect Haruka. Ruko gets pounced on by Gento's men while he grabs Yuto and tosses him away. Gento tells his daughter to stop being stubborn and return to their house. She refuses, saying she's not in the wrong for loving anime. Angered, Gento blames Yuto for influencing his daughter. Yuto boldly says that Haruka's interests aren't bad and that she's sincere and earnest in her hobby. Ruko breaks free while Hazuki moves in front of them with her chainsaw. Just then, Mika arrives with her backup. Gento becomes fearful as his wife, Akio, smiles at him. She tells him that it's fine that they overlook her hobby since she's doing well with her studies. When he tries to protest, Akio gets angry, which makes him nervous. She gives Haruka her full support while Gento finally relents. Overjoyed, Haruka hugs Yuto, but he fails to return the embrace upon seeing the stares of the other people around them. Before they leave, Gento apologizes and compliments Yuto's boldness. When Mika is asked for dating advice by her friends, she confidently gives them all a lesson. Later, she tells Nanami that she actually doesn't have any experience at all. Meanwhile, Gento is paranoid about Haruka being alone with Yuto, but Akio tells him that they should trust their daughter. Just then, Mika and Nanami arrive and eavesdrop on Yuto and Haruka. They hear them having a hot conversation, and Mika, who's flustered, barges in, only to find out that the two are only cooking pancakes. She joins the couple as they spend hours only talking to each other. Disappointed, Mika tells her mate that the two need to level up their relationship, and she's going to teach Yuto how to be a good lover. She calls him up and tells him to meet her on Sunday. When she sees him, she declares that they're going on a date. In a cafe, she tells him he needs to be more proactive in their relationship. Yuto tells her to mind her own business, but she insists that without her help, their relationship won't go anywhere. She starts telling him to look into her sister's eyes when she notices his gaze. She's taken aback when Yuto's arm shoots out towards her, but he only steadies the collapsing parfait. Mika approves and says he should save her sister like this too. Next, she tells him to hold her hand. He does, and then she trips, but Yuto catches her, making her satisfied. In the movie theater, she instructs him to snuggle with Haruka when they watch the movie. She leans on him and falls asleep. Afterward, Mika tells them that they're going to a festival, where they'll meet Haruka during the fireworks display. When they start walking, he holds her hand, which surprises her. They bump into Shina, who says she's going to the festival later. He compliments her outfit before Mika drags him away. She gets them dressed in yukata and compliments Yuto on how he looks. When he fails to compliment her immediately, she berates him and says he should do better when he sees her sister. Later, they enjoy the festival before they go see the fireworks. Yuto offers to piggyback her, making her shy. Mika is confident that things will get better now between Yuto and Haruka. He apologizes for being a burden, but she only tells him that she had fun. Haruka arrives, and with a bit of reminding from Mika, he compliments Haruka's yukata. Mika tells him that it's okay to put her down now, but Yuto insists to carry her so she can see the fireworks well. The next morning, Yukari announces that the cultural festival season has arrived. Shina volunteers to participate in the festival planning committee, while Yuto gets picked by Yukari. He's hesitant, but he eventually yields when Shina and his classmates convince him. Yuto and Shina take suggestions from their classmates on what their class is going to do during the cultural festival. When Nobunaga recommends that they do a cosplay cafe, his idea wins, and Haruka is excited to see that they get to cosplay. Shina whisks Yuto away with her as they need to attend a meeting. Later, Haruka feels left out when she sees Yuto and Shina together. At home, she tells Mika and the mates that Yuto is busy with the festival committee. They're disappointed that she isn't his partner, and Mika says Haruka needs to support him from behind the scenes by baking him cookies or offering him massages. Haruka perks up when Mika suggests that they go to the folk dance together. The next day, she's glad when Yuto asks for her help. He wants to see cosplay outfits, and she offers to take him to Akibara to see them. On Sunday, they check out the cosplay outfits for reference when Yuto suggests that Haruka try on a cosplay outfit that she likes. After putting it on, she shows it to Yuto, who's stunned at how pretty she looks. Suddenly, Nobunaga arrives and Yuto rushes inside the changing room. He presses up against Haruka and the two share an intimate moment. Outside, Yuto thanks her with a music box for her help. He receives a call from Mika saying her father is really mad because Haruka stood him up when they were supposed to meet a famous pianist that day. Gento arrives in a rage, and Yuto takes responsibility. He's about to hit him when Hazuka and Nanami stop his attack under Akio's orders. She berates her husband for being a hothead, but when he still insists it's Yuto's fault, she slaps him, which sends Gento falling to the ground. She tells her daughter to explain herself, and Haruka replies that it made her happy when Yuto asked for his help. She admits that she's wrong for breaking her promise to her father, but today meant a lot to her. Yuto insists that it's his fault for not knowing that his request would be inconvenient to her. Akio forgives her, as long as this incident never happens again. To make it up to Haruka, Yuto asks her if she wants him to do anything, and she replies she wants to go together with him to the folk dance. The next day, they show Sheena the outfits they can use, and everyone works hard to make the cafe perfect. Mika and the maids observe Haruka as she's hard at work in their kitchen. She reveals that she's baking cookies for Yuto, who's busy with the committee. She rushes back to the school with a basket of refreshments. She's stunned when she sees Yuto in a compromising position with Sheena. A few minutes earlier, Yuto and Sheena were finally done with their preparations. They thanked each other when suddenly, the menu board fell, and Yuto quickly saved Sheena, sending both of them to the ground. The two looked towards the door when it opened, revealing a stunned Haruka. Currently, Haruka apologizes before running away. Sheena immediately tells Yuto to run after her. He catches up to her and explains that what she saw was an accident. Haruka says she understands, and a tear rolls down her face. She runs away, leaving Yuto feeling troubled. He later tries to call her, but Hazuki informs him that she went to bed early. The next day, Yuto is determined to explain properly what happened, but when he sees Haruka in her cosplay outfit, she pretends that nothing is wrong. He's approached by Sheena in a devil costume, and she reveals that she and Haruka entered the festival's beauty contest. She then asks if Haruka is fine after yesterday, and he replies that she seemed okay, but Sheena is doubtful. Their cafe proves to be successful. Yuto tries to look for a chance to talk to Haruka, but she rebuffs him every time, saying she's busy. Mika and the maids arrive to see their cafe. The beauty contest winner is Haruka. However, her tears fall when she sees Yuto waving at her. He confronts her, but she refuses to listen at all, and she runs away. He searches everywhere for her, but his efforts are in vain. He encounters Sheena, who invites him to go to the folk dance with her. When she sees him hesitating, she instantly retracts her offer, saying she's going with friends. He continues his search, where he then meets Hazuki, who reveals she saw everything that happened yesterday. She advises him not to make a mistake when making a decision. She shares her painful past, saying she let go of what she should not have, before directing him to Haruka. While the other students enjoy the dance, Yuto approaches Haruka and apologizes for yesterday and for not noticing that she was sad. Haruka then says he did nothing wrong. She tells him she didn't understand her feelings when she saw him with Sheena. She felt a pain in her chest like she lost something valuable. It was the first time she felt something like that, and she didn't know how to face it. He promises that he won't go away and tells her he wants to be with her. She tells him she feels the same, and they hug. Yuto then invites her to dance to the melody of the music box. Over the phone, Mika asks Yuto if he's free on the 20th. He remembers that day is Haruka's birthday. Mika tells him there's going to be a party in the evening. The next day, he tries to ask Haruka what she wants, but her answers are either too simple or outrageous. He decides to go to Akibara to buy an Aki-chan scale figure. Nobunaga spots him and helps him choose. In the end, he buys a scale figure that reminds him of a pose that Haruka did. Nobunaga comments these changed. He recalls a time when they fought because Yuto gave away his book that Nobunaga bought. It was the first edition of Innocent Smile. On the way home, he remembers the story of how Haruka started to like anime. Somehow, he vaguely remembers giving away something similar in the past. His attention is caught by Nanami, who waves him over to her car. Inside, Hazuki reminds him that it's Haruka's birthday, and the party is tonight. Ruko and Yukari are already enjoying a bottle of wine, saying they got invited too. The maids drive them to a plane, which then takes them to Happy Spring Island. Mika informs him that their father bought the island for the express purpose of hosting Haruka's birthday party. She points out to the containers inside the plane that are full of presents for Haruka, which makes Yuto self-conscious about his gift. Haruka arrives, happy to see Yuto. At the beach, Yuto wanders off and sees an old man who says he lost his hook. He helps him, but they still don't find the hook. The old man asks how he knows Haruka, and he answers that she's his friend. Mika calls for him, and the man tells him to go ahead. Yuto gets a nosebleed when he sees Haruka in a swimsuit. The group then have fun at the beach. Haruka and Yuto are playing when Haruka suddenly sinks. Yuto is quick to save her, bringing her to shore. Haruka is fine, but Yukari says she needs CPR while signaling to the others to go along with her. Worried, he moves close to her when she suddenly awakes, and the two blush furiously. In the distance, a blonde guy witnesses the whole thing and gets jealous. In the evening, Yuto's group is directed by the maids to a room where their outfits are. Yuto gets harassed by the blonde man who says people like him should not be allowed to join the party. He shows off the expensive gifts that he plans to give Haruka, saying those will suit her. He doubts that Yuto can give something of equal value and tells him he's better off leaving the party. Yuto changes into formal clothes, still unsure of his present. Haruka makes her grand entrance as the birthday girl. Meanwhile, Mika drags Yuto with her, and they're just in time to see Haruka blow out her candles. Mika urges him to greet her loudly, and Haruka is happy when she hears him. Mika gives him a numbered ticket so he can give his present to Haruka. There's a long line of people who want to impress her with their gifts. He hears a commotion and sees it's only Yukari and Ruko who are drunk. Embarrassed, he goes away only to bump into the pompous blonde from earlier, Sutherland. He mocks his gift, and one of his friends yanks it away from him. He tries to get it back, but the wrapping rips, exposing his gift to Haruka. Sutherland calls the gift cheap and even steps on it. He says Yuto's gift could not be compared to the expensive gifts, his included, that are displayed for her. Yuto is dismayed, for once feeling the disparity between him and Haruka. He takes his gift and is about to leave until the old man says he expected better from the first friend that Haruka brings along. Suddenly, he realizes that he knows the true Haruka and that she will love his gift. He then proceeds to where Haruka is just as his number is being called. Meanwhile, Sutherland gets impatient and says he'll go first. He introduces himself but then gets cut off by Yuto. He tries to mock him again, but he ignores him. Haruka is overjoyed upon receiving the gift, which surprises Sutherland and the rest of the guests. Gento welcomes Yuto, shaking his hand, which surprises the guests even more. Sutherland gets pissed at getting pushed aside and tells his father that he's been insulted. The old man from the beach earlier intervenes, saying Yuto did nothing wrong, and in fact, his gift made her happier than any other gift. Sutherland gets pissed and collars the old man. However, his father recognizes the man and gets terrified. He instead punches his son, knocking him out and making him apologize to everyone. It turns out that the old man is Haruka's grandfather. Later in her room, Haruka shows Yuto her collection of Aki-chan, including his gift and the first edition of Innocent Smile. Yuto recognizes the cover and finally realizes where he's seen it before. He was the one to give Haruka the magazine years ago when she was crying. He laughs and she gets curious. She pushes him back before he switches their positions. They share an intimate moment where Yuto finally kisses her before the door opens and their family comes spilling inside. The others are giddy, while Gento is outraged. While they're being chased, Yuto invites Haruka to come with him to Akibara again, as she happily agrees.